So let's talk about new home build terms, GST, and most importantly, what clients these days are expecting of you and how we're solving that. So this has been something we've worked on for almost a year now, trying to find the gap, close the gap between a lot of these infill builders and smaller builders that don't have their own new home purchase contracts and are leaning on realtors to create those terms and do the paperwork for them like they're used to in a resale purchase contract. So, as you know, at the top of the purchase contract, it says resale purchase contract for both single family and residential and condos, but the it's not intended for new homes because there's a whole bunch of terms and aspects that are relevant just to new homes. But what we've tried to do, and I'll share my screen here, is create a document and a guide that helps in these various situations. So what we're finding is realtors, our realtors were kind of all doing their own thing and having their own little versions of addendums and things like that. Whenever you create custom terms, you take on all the liability for those terms. And so what we've tried to do is create a guide for both you guys and your clients specific to new construction. So builders should have their own contracts. It basically says that and has this disclaimer. It's not legal advice and it's not a new build schedule. And they should always consult a lawyer for legal interpretation and accountant for GST. So what we go through in this form is all the major components with new construction properties as it relates to the area purchase contracts. Okay, so they're not intended for that use, but they're being used for it. So we're trying to close the gap. So real property report's a big one. Are they going to provide one or not? Sometimes they can't even provide a real property report because they don't have the final grade done and everything like that on the property. So address that. GST is the biggest one with this new home buyers rebate. So we just had a great session today with the panel on new construction. And so I'm going to try to excerpt out of that and attach it to this video, the Legacy Homes, Signature Homes owner that talked about how they handle it. Now, every builder is a bit different with how they handle it. And the main point is that the purchase contract includes GST, and typically you'll have a term written in that it's net of any new housing rebate. But the MLS listing, all MLS listings, new build or resale or otherwise, are inclusive of GST. It says it right in the purchase contract. So you need to address how GST rebates are handled. So there's the regular rebate that still exists, which is summarized mathematically here. And then there's the new first-time home buyers rebate that passed in December of 2025. And literally the government of Canada's website on that with details only launched on March 17th of 2026 here. So we're hot off the presses with all this stuff, but you want to, is GST rebate included in the price? And are you claiming the rebate on behalf of your client? Like, is there a term that has that kind of rebate flow through the builder and get factored in? So at the end of the day, everyone's a bit different. Make sure you're addressing GST in the terms, and we'll give you some recommended wording. Payments on completion day, specifically, even if an RPR is not available, interest rate, if it's waiting on certain things or there's holdbacks, is a critical term. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Mortgage funding, you can't delay or withhold mortgage funds, especially like draw style mortgages. But even if it's just a full funded mortgage at the completion of a build, the builder wants to get paid is the bottom line of it. And so they structure those to make sure there's nothing that you can hold back there if something's not done. That's handled separately. Encumbrances on title that need to be addressed. There's typically terms related to anything that's typical of a new construction, like subdivision, HOA caveats, architectural controls, developmental agreements, and otherwise. Those are expected to be assumed, but there's usually a term to address those. And we talked about it in today's session as well. If there's any of those things on title, like easements, architectural controls, HOA caveats, you should if you're representing the buyer, you need to pull those instruments as well as pull title and make sure the buyer's aware of all those things they're now buying into. It's no different than buying a condo. You typically wouldn't buy a condo without reading the condo documents and having them reviewed. So if you want them to, again, have a lawyer review them, if there's specific questions, you could use AI to create summaries or ask questions of it. I would recommend Notebook LM. It's a Google product for things like that. You can dump the documents into it and then have it give you ask questions or create a summary. But again, always caution yourself to suggest that to clients. They can kind of do it on their own, but don't you can't warranty results from AI summaries. Obviously, site work. So like typically it's just the builder's responsibility for rough grade, which means they have like rough dirt, not topsoil, right? And settling is normal. And so for make that's a big one that we get a lot of complaints on and a lot of issues around. And then that coincides with the landscape deposit. Typical is 2,500 bucks, but it can be anything. That's typically matches whatever the developer had stipulated in the subdivision where it's new construction. But some builders are doing a landscape deposit with infill even to make sure that that some form of landscaping is actually completed. And then builder's lien holdback. So typically there's no builder's liens, and then they'll stipulate an interest rate of anything that's held back. So typically new home warranty is where these things are covered, and we'll talk about that next. Seasonal holdbacks. So if they can't pour the driveway or sidewalks or stonework or anything that's required, if it's like finished and they have occupancy in the middle of winter or second spring or whatever, where they don't have the weather conditions they need for things to cure properly and that, there'll be seasonal holdbacks. And typically, and this is a big one, if there is those, you need to make sure you're using one of the terms that will have some suggested wording below in this document for them to make sure that's in your contract so that there's some teeth that the money can be held back. Um, Developer requirements, buyers must sign all required developer documents, including HOA agreements, etc., where applicable. So if there's things that the developer requires for new construction, assignments. So typically every contract in Alberta is assignable, but builders contracts generally have a term to not allow it without both parties' written consent. So you don't want the builder to be able to assign your contract to someone else to build the house, as an example. You're contracting with them to build and you want the liability and the new home warranty with them. Likewise, the builder doesn't want you to put it under contract and then flip that to someone else. So deal with assignments. Notices and delivery of those is a critical one with new construction, so make sure it's super clear. And new home warranty. So there's a link here to the new home warranty, Alberta New Home Buyer Protection Act, which governs them. The builder is the one who has to enroll in any approved warranty program. And even if you're self-building, you have to do the same thing for yourself. You have to get one, but there's a different program for self-build. There's additional coverage is only provided if specifically agreed to in writing. So there's no like additional warranties provided by the builder unless they offer it. There's a couple builders that I know of locally in Edmonton that are offering kind of additional levels of warranty to kind of deal with those common uncertainties of a lot of buyer clients that are worried about issues or have heard about issues. But agents must identify builder warranty package. Builders are advised to read it fully and diarize key dates, or buyers are advised. So the main one being the 1 year mark, and we usually suggest best practice, have your home inspector still do the inspection, and then at the 11-month mark, have that same home inspector come back. A lot of our preferred vendor partnered home inspectors offer that service. It's a minor, a couple $100 additional fee to have them come back out. They give you a written report that summarizes any deficiencies. And then if you need to submit a claim on new home warranty on the majority of the items that are dealt with is by the first year, 12 months, from the date on your policy. So usually that's right around possession date, but I've had some deals where people missed it by a day or two. And unfortunately, we're dealing with a builder that was trying to push them past that date. So that's a big one. Possession and inspections, kind of like we talked about, that 11th month mark, is the possession inspection is completed with a builder representative, et cetera, et cetera. So again, this is not a default part of the area resale purchase contract. So like we talk about with holdback terms and stuff, walkthroughs and things like that aren't the default. It's normal and kind of the standard required with new construction, but you need to write it in and specify how it's done and who can do it. How to use personal information, so kind of protection of those facts are typically should be added, and walkthroughs and handling of any deficiencies. No possession day holdbacks are permitted typically unless documented in the contract paperwork and signed by both parties. Deficiencies are handled according to new home warranty. A walkthrough occurs before possession, and then finished quality should be specified in your agreement. So we cannot create a set schedule for any of this without taking full liability for every single new home build we do on the incorrect contract. But what we tried to do is summarize a list of possible wording in terms of clients that you may wish to add to your area purchase contract via an addendum or a schedule. So RPR, suggested wording, GST, payments due, and a percentage for the interest rate if it's late. Same thing with mortgage funds holdback with the percentage. The area purchase contract says ATB prime plus 3%. And so if you're negotiating otherwise, add that in there. Encumbrances and dealing with them, site work, landscape deposit with a fill in the blank, builder's liens, seasonal holdbacks, developers, all these terms are there for you. So pick and choose those that apply to your individual situation. And at the end of the day, these things are hoping to be a guide, but you should get independent legal advice and independent accounting advice on every individual situation and for their personal situation and property. So hopefully that is a great resource for you guys. I know that's something we've been working on for a while now as we see the need for it. And I haven't seen anybody else in the market do it. But if you guys have seen anything else, or if there's anything you think we can research or do to make that better, as always, let us know. And that's what we're here for, to have your back and help you support your clients at the highest level possible.